Perfect. Well, welcome. Excited that everyone could join us today for an ag teacher Q&A panel. Doing this one for the first time virtual. So excited that everybody could join us. I know we have kind of a mix today of new teachers and some more experienced teachers. Really excited for our panel today. We have some rock star ag teachers who hopefully will have some wealth of wisdom to share with us. So we're just going to jump in and get started if that's okay with everyone. Just Mason mentioned a few moments ago, if you've got a question throughout any of this, if you will put those questions in the chat, and I'll kind of look through those and be sure that we ask some of those questions. And hopefully we'll have maybe a little bit of time at the end to ask some of those live. So we're going to start off with a question for everybody. I'm going to start with Ms. Harper. We'll let you be the first one to answer the question, but this will be a question for everybody. So everybody be thinking about this one. This one's really easy. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, your teaching experience, where you've taught, years of experience, etc., those types of things.
Sure. Let's see. I'm starting my 23rd year of teaching. I started teaching. I taught a year at Moore, and then my husband and I taught together at Atoka. And then 10 years ago, we made the move to Medill. And so we've been here at Medill since then.
Awesome. Mr. Delosier. Mr. Delosier, you're muted. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. I was muted. Devin Delosier, started teaching in 1996. This will be my 25th year. I actually taught at Quapaw High School 2 years. Then I've kind of got a unique story. In 1998, my dad retired from Adair, and I got the opportunity to move home. And so I've been here since July of 1998. And like I said, getting ready to start my 25th year. They've had 40 years of a Delosier at Adair, so nobody's ran us off yet. It's been pretty good so far. So anyway,
that's a blessing right there. Love that. Yeah. All right, Mr. Wilkinson.
Rookie move, sorry. This is my 19th, 20th year, somewhere around there. Started out at Sweetwater America, the smallest school in the state. Literally had 0 kids graduate 1 year. So it was a very unique, very good learning experience. My principal was actually, the superintendent was my principal in high school, and he kind of got my foot in the door. From there, I went home to Cement for 10 years and really tried to grow that program and reinvent it and make it become more successful. And then I followed Mr. Lucas to Calumet and moved my family and been here for the last 4 years. And again, just kind of trying to get a program established that hasn't existed. And he did a very good job, and we're still trying to build some momentum on that.
Awesome. Awesome. Ms. Welchel, share a little bit about yourself.
All right. Well, my name is Raquel Welchel. I'm apparently one of the newer ones on the panel. I'm going into my 5th year here at Ryan, Oklahoma. We're a very small Title I school on the Oklahoma-Texas border in the Central District. I have a main focus in the classroom and leadership, where we have a shop teacher. So we have a little bit of a diversity here. I started at Ryan straight out of college, so I've been here ever since, and I feel like it's officially my program this year is 5th year. So really excited to see what this year holds.
All right, Mr. Davis, round us out. Tell us a little bit about yourself. You're muted. Sorry.
There we go. Thank you. My name is Josh Davis. Like I said, I am starting my 11th year, I think, 11th or 12th. Had the opportunity to teach at Adair. I've been at Bethel, Wellston, and then now I'm at North Rock Creek, which is in the central area, close to Shawnee is kind of where we're at, between Shawnee and Meeker. So it's a new program. So I've had lots of good experience and good teaching partners and those kinds of things. It's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate all of you panelists being here, and really excited to see some of the wealth of knowledge that you're going to share with us. Ms. Harper, I'm going to jump back to you. Got a question for you. How do you establish rules and procedures in your classroom? How do you manage behavior problems in your class?
Okay. First of all, thank you guys for inviting me to be a part. But jumping right into rules and procedures, I start pretty simply with rules. I think a good rule of thumb for rules is to keep them simple and don't box yourself in a corner with rules. When I started teaching, I can remember specifically that I thought I needed a list of rules, posted. And so I have kind of gotten away from that, and I keep it pretty simple. As a matter of fact, my rules are posted over my shoulder. I don't know if you can see them. I can rip them off the wall if somebody wants to see them. But it's basically be respectful of the people who visit our building, be respectful of the property around us and your peers, and you'll get respect in return, something like that. And that leaves me some flexibility on the first day to talk about respect and my expectations for students and what that looks like in my classroom. And, it doesn't really box me in if I put rules that are so specific that might confuse 8th graders or get in the way of just helping a kid learn how to be a good classmate. So I think simple, straightforward rules that you can use to help kids really learn to navigate high school and the world are the way that should work. So, to piggyback on that, my procedures kind of follow that and help them learn those things. And I guess, that all starts, we have an 8th grade program. I don't know if you guys all do, but I teach all the 8th graders and Mr. Harper teaches all the freshmen. So I kind of feel like it's my responsibility to kind of make sure those 8th graders understand from off the bat, like what happens in ag and what their role is and how they should behave when they're in the ag building. Because like many of you guys, our ag building's detached from the school. So sometimes that walk from the school to the ag building can lend itself to like, hey, we're away from the main building. We can do whatever. And so I kind of feel like it's my responsibility, since I've got the first, wave of students as 8th graders, to kind of teach them what we expect over here. And so I do that. Some people might think my classroom is a little bit too organized like a middle school or elementary classroom, but I think that they have to have procedures. They have to learn how to be organized. I still have to learn how to be organized about half the time. But so I do that in several ways. First of all, I have tables in my classroom. I don't, you may have desks, but I have tables, which works out good for me. I number all my tables, and that allows me to use those numbered tables as like table groups. And so if I want to break kids into groups, they're already numbered. And, I'll say table 1, you're going to work on this. Table 2, you're going to work on that, blah, blah, blah. It also allows me to, when kids have to get materials, I can say table 1 and 2, go get your materials. When you come back, we'll move on, and then 3 and 4, go get your materials. That way everybody doesn't get up and go sharpen pencils, or everybody doesn't get up and go do something at one time. I also have bins for each of my class periods in the back of my room. And the first day of school, the kids will get a school supply list from me, which basically is a package of pencils and a folder that looks like this one. And it's got, the brads in the center, and everyone has to bring one. And they keep those folders, and we have basically a pencil pile. I have a box that we keep pencils in just in case. And in this folder, they keep everything. So they label the front of their folder. You can see it says unfinished. So if we start an assignment and they're still working on it, they put it in the front of their folder. In the back are graded things that I return to them. And we clean it out every 9 weeks. And in the middle is the most useful part to me. I do bell ringers every day. We call them mind movers. And so in that, they write their mind mover, and that kind of gets them seated, gives them something to do while I'm doing, the housekeeping things that have to be done. And then we allow about 10 pages for that. They have to divide their folder, and then after that is all notes. So they keep notes they take in my classroom after the divided page. So that may be more information than you wanted, but I really try to, right off the bat, get those 8th graders in a situation where they feel comfortable. They're like, oh, I know what's going to happen in this classroom. And I think that makes kids feel a little more comfortable. And if we start off that way, to be honest, I have very few discipline problems. And because they know that, you know, it's easier if we're all organized and things go and they're learning something, and it makes them feel a little more at ease, I think. So that helps me and it helps them. And honestly, with behavior problems, if you have some behavior problems right off the bat, you just have to take care of them right then. And a lot of times for me, that simply means just maybe asking a kid to stop doing something. And then I pretty much hold kids after class the first few weeks of school. If they do something that I don't think really falls in line with how they need to behave in class, I keep them after class and just say, explain my expectation specifically. And I don't know, I just really don't have very many behavior problems because I try to nip it in the bud early on. So.
Absolutely. Ms. Harper, it seems like you front load a lot of those things that make life easier for you, that
Yes.
through organization, then you don't seem to have as many of those problems. So I think there's a lot of good takeaways from that. Thanks for sharing that folder with us.
Yep.
Mr. Delosier, moving to you. You've been, there's been a Delosier in Adair for 40 plus years. I'm sure that you have a wealth of knowledge to talk about when it relates to booster clubs. So tell us a little bit about how you structure your booster club. What are some positive things, and maybe a few things to avoid there?
Well, I think honestly, when I started my teaching career, I thought, boy, I've got to drive into Quapaw, America, and say, hey, boy, we need a really strong booster club and get all this support going. And absolutely, I'll just tell you, as a young teacher, it failed. There was absolutely no purpose, no interest, no desire to ever have some sort of ag booster club at Quapaw, Oklahoma. Okay. 2 years later, so I kind of felt like a failure, to be honest with you, in that whole thing. 2 years later, I moved to Adair as a 24-year-old teacher, and there was already an established booster club here. And our deal is kind of unique here at Adair in the fact that we show up basically our cream cells in the fall. And so what had been established here before I came is you basically meet with that booster club in the spring and the summer, and then the rest of the year, you know, there's no meetings with parents or anything like that. And there was a president elected, there still is, a secretary, a treasurer to handle the funds. We still do 1 to 2 fundraisers a year, which is anything from a stock show to a pig sale to generate money for our kids. And then from there, you know, from there manage those funds and distribute those to those kids throughout the year. The only thing that I would say is that I have tried to do as I've gotten older is I have tried to keep more control of that booster club, because I absolutely think it can be a monster that can consume you, especially as a young teacher. And so I don't want to really portray myself as a controlling person, but as I've gotten older, I am. So it's one of those deals that I want it to go the direction and be positive for students, because that's our primary focus. So what I'm trying to say here today is I don't think it'll work in every community. I don't think a booster club will work in every community. At Adair, even being out of school in March, we still have 120, 130 hogs on feed for the fall, 20 head of sheep, 30 head of goats, and about 40 head of cattle going into this county fair that we hope we even have. And so the monster there in terms of the whole show deal is going. And so the essence and the need for a booster club is very important. So next week, we will have a local show here at Adair that we built a facility for, and we have raised enough money to pay every kid $200 to $300 for just showing up at our local show. So that's things there that we've tried to establish, and I've honestly went as far as I hope in the next 9 years before I retire and go to the insurance business, that we we can hopefully get a small premium sale going here at Adair before we go to our county fair is my goal. The structure of that booster club, I'm just telling you, you got to have an officer team. You got to have those parents here supporting you. You got to put the word out that it's available for, I guess it doesn't necessarily have to be show parents. It could be your judging parents too. It's primarily always been at Adair, just show parents. But I have had kids that just judge their parents join in on stuff too and help us. But at the same time too, I think the teacher has got to establish some parameters there where it doesn't consume you as a teacher. Because I know, just for instance, my teaching partner, Shane Johnson, I know he had at a previous school got into some issues with Booster Club because basically they had too much control. And they'll, you know, that could mean your job at a certain point in time if that does happen. So hopefully that helps somebody. I know obviously my situation's pretty unique, being raised in this community and everything and being here basically my entire life. I know all these people and I kind of know what to expect before they ever walk in my door, you know, and everything, and kind of know how to handle them and go from there. So hopefully that helps somebody on that part.
Yeah, that's some great advice. You know, there's several new programs or ag teachers in new programs. And so there's some good things to remember there. All right, Mr. Wilkinson, how do you encourage students to get more involved in FFA? We were talking earlier, you know, Calumet is still maybe what many would consider a newer program for sure. Tell us, how do you continue to encourage students to be involved in FFA?
My biggest thing as an ag teacher and what I would recommend to younger ag teachers is try to have a well-rounded program. And by that, I mean, try to expose your kids to a multiple of opportunities. I kind of reference it as throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing what will stick. We try everything. I push leadership really, really heavy and hard, and because that's kind of my forte. But the CDEs and that stuff, I try to make it fun as possible, and just if there's an opportunity, I'm going to take a kid to it. That's just been my philosophy. And I found some stuff here that one of the things that I do is in my 8th and 9th grade, I actually have them work on some projects to where they develop flyers. Like this one's over milk quality, where we use Google, which is going to be coming really handy for most people. And I signed them in groups and had those kids research it and put together a flyer via Canvas or via Google or whatever that they wanted, and then get up in class and present them. And that creates questions and interest. And then I can take those kids and say, you know, who wants to do meat judging? And so I've got a flyer where they put together a meat judging flyer. And also we have a back to school night like most people do. And my officers put together a trifold and we set it out that's got pictures that show us doing fun activities. We don't have our meetings as often as we would like, but we try to have some fun meetings throughout the year, have an ugly sweater contest, have a Halloween movie, pizza day, just trying to create some fun activities for those kids to get involved and start asking questions. And honestly, when we have success, I try to blast it all over the school. I have the principal announce it. I put it on our Facebook page. That way, those younger kids say, well, how do I get to do that? Or how do I get an FFA jacket? So that's the short end of the story. And I'd be more than willing to share any of my stories with those young teachers. And I know we all would, but I just wanted to throw that out there that we are all available to everybody. That's the greatest part of our organization. And we'll kind of go into some more about that later, and we'll talk about some OAETA benefits and how you can get involved in that. But that's kind of the nutshell of just exposing those kids, throwing them in ag truck, take them. When we go to opening, closing ceremonies, we're a small program, but I'll roll in there with 18 to 22 kids. And just to get them out, get them exposed, let them get their foot in the door. And you'd be surprised, very surprised at some of the students that really, really take an interest in those things. And you can build on that.
Absolutely. Really, really enjoy those posters. A good way that you can do some things in the classroom that also benefit on that the FFA circle there in our 3-circle model. So, Mr. Wilkinson, appreciate that. It's a great idea. Ms. Welchel, let's talk about how do you prepare for the first day of class. So I need you to kind of think back to that first-year teacher all over again. And what are some things that you need to make sure that you have prepared as that first day of class?
Oh man, thinking back to that first year, I came into it, of course, straight out of college, just nervous as can be, and I was just worried that these kids are going to eat me alive. I don't know what to expect. So I took some advice from some of these older ag teachers who had some really good advice, and I've just kind of worked off of that. When I saw and heard this question, the first thing that came to mind was organization. You just need to be organized. And like what Mrs. Harper said earlier, you can always learn how to be more organized. There's nothing wrong with learning how to be more organized. Have your classroom set up to what you expect your students to expect for the whole year. Some of these 8th graders coming in have never been in that classroom. It's different than a regular classroom environment because they're not sitting at tables in our school. They're not sitting in like little desks. They're sitting at wide tables, and they're looking around, seeing this emblem, wondering what this is, seeing a bunch of blue and gold. You just got to be ready for them to come in and be excited, and you have to be excited for that. Have all your paperwork ready to hand out. Really important that you set your expectations for those kids. Have your class syllabus. If you need a syllabus, you can always come to another ag teacher who's been teaching for a while. Tell them what you're going to do in that class. Have a student-parent contract, especially if you are going to be out in the shop or you're going to be out in the greenhouse. There are safety issues you have to take, so keep that in mind. And also be ready to hand out a year of activities. This year is going to look a little bit different than it has in the past, but you can still guarantee that you're going to do at least some of these activities, try to in person and have some online, and kind of let these parents know what to expect if their kid is going to get active. Encourage them to do that. Also, I always hand out a packet that explains what AET is, what an SAE is, and all the information how those students can log on. I try not to hit my kids with the alphabet soup the first day. I don't want to overwhelm them because they're already excited about it. Of course, your kids that are age 17 up, they've already been with you for years and they know what it's about. But those 8th graders, 9th graders coming in, they're going to be very overwhelmed with what's going on. So don't overdo it. I also let my first day be the day that I set my expectations as far as discipline. My first year I came into it and I was just really adamant about telling these kids what they could and couldn't do. And I kind of learned from that. It was a very big learning curve that these kids don't want to have the finger pointed in their face telling them what they can and can't do. You got to remember that actions and attitudes are caught and not taught. So if they see that you are excited and hyped to go do something, they're going to have the same attitude. If they have someone telling them, you can't do this, you can't do that, they're not going to click very well with that. And it's one of those things that I have learned over the last few years, that you got to let them know what their opportunities and their experiences are going to be instead of exactly what the rules are. And of course, they're going to learn right from wrong in that first year. And you got to remember they're kids. It's going to have to be like that. And honestly, just set yourself aside. Let them know that you're a person too, just like them. Not everybody's perfect. And if you can be there for them, be there for them. And also something new I started last year was at the end of the first day, pretty much through the whole first week, I'll do a leadership activity with them. Similar things to what we do at alumni camp. And they love it. They get to know each other better. They're all acting as a group and they're having fun. They're moving. They're not having to sit in a seat. So try to just make your classroom your space. Make it somewhere that they can come and they're ready to be there. They're ready to get rolling and learn for you. So, and
great advice there. That's good. We're going to switch gears, Mr. Davis. You are here on the panel, been in a unique situation. You've been in a well-established program, just moved. You finished up year number 1 at a brand new program. Tell us a little bit about Rock Creek. Specifically, what are some of the early priorities in starting a program like Rock Creek?
Well, to understand that a little bit, you have to understand kind of the school. And North Rock Creek has been a K-8 school for the last 30, 40, 50 years. It's located between Meeker and Shawnee, just outside of Shawnee. So we're really a suburb type school. There's not a town, or there's a little bit of a community. We have a lot of kids transfer in that live in district that come from other K-8 schools or come from Shawnee, Meeker, Craig. There's a little bit of a rural area there. But essentially the school has been a K-8 school for a long time. And just a few years ago, they decided to go to a full high school and started adding extracurricular programs like Ag Ed and FFA. And so I got the opportunity to come last year, which was unique because of the situation we've been in. So we didn't get to finish the year fully and really get to experience some of the things that I would have liked for these kids to got to experience. But the unique priorities have really, for me, been trying to establish just what our ag education is, what career tech is, what FFA is, not only with kids and parents, but largely with administrators in the school system and other teachers. A lot like Ricky said, they just don't know. And I have a good friend, and he always says they don't know what they don't know. And so that's true. They just don't. And so a lot of education, I've really put a lot of priority on blasting those things out that kids have done. Much like Mr. Wilkinson said also, everything's a big deal. So it goes on the video board. It goes out in the newspaper. I kind of have a little bit of philosophy, success breeds success. So I just try to put anything in there that is a success. Try to get kids exposure. So it's been a big priority to try to help those kids understand just what we're doing. Again, like he said, try to get them in a truck, on a bus, go somewhere, just go see what this thing is. And so that's really been important to me. We haven't got into a lot of the booster club stuff yet, or some of the other maybe more logistical things as far as an ag program or FFA program goes. But a lot of it has been just really trying to establish the program itself within the school system. And so that's been interesting. It's been challenging. There's been lots of ups and downs with that. So it's been a unique situation there. But I hope that answers that question. I can certainly expound on it more. I could talk about this deal for a while. It's been a neat experience.
No, that's great. That's great. You sharing some of those early priorities, some things that need to think about. It's been a rather peculiar type of event where we've had a lot of these new programs happening. So it's interesting to see how Rock Creek, comes about, and appreciate your hard work there. Ms. Harper, we're going to jump back to you. I think this is probably a question that a lot of young ag teachers struggle with, and that is that work-life balance. How do we figure out those types of things? So would you mind sharing some strategies that you have for balancing work life and personal life?
I'll do my best. I giggle a little at this question because I told Bart, my husband, that someone must think that we do that.
I'm sorry, I've been spewing it to everybody, so just blame me. I'll take it.
Because I really don't feel like we do a great job of that sometimes, but especially as a young teacher, I had to think way back to when I was a young teacher and before we had kids of our own, and when we were both trying to establish ourselves and figure out what the heck we needed to be doing day in, day out. I would say that, to be a successful teacher, ag teacher, your priority probably really does have to be teaching ag. I mean, it really was the first couple of years to 5 years. I mean, teaching ag was my priority. We didn't have kids until we had been teaching about 7 years. And so that was a big change for us because then priorities did change whether I wanted them to or not. And so that I can remember very specifically the year that we had an infant. We had been teaching for 7 or 8 years. We could do whatever. We could be at the ag building as long as we wanted. We could make our own schedules, and then we had an infant, and that changed things. So I think basically, over a career as an ag teacher, your strategies for balancing home and work will, they will change over time. I think as a young teacher, I really believe if you want to be a successful young ag teacher, you're probably going to have to devote more time to the program than those of us who've taught 20 years or something, because you kind of figure out how to do things go a little more smoothly, what to do, what not to do. But I think you do have to whittle out some time for yourself to get away from the ag building. So I said all those things, but there are times when you have to just say, I can't, no more hours at the ag building. I've got to go home and do something other than, or go somewhere and do something other than be at the ag building. And so for us, Sundays are those days. We try not to, in CDE season, we do schedule practices sometimes on Sundays. But for the most part, Sundays, we try to just have family time and do our thing. It's kind of nice now that we have older kids. Our oldest will be a junior, and he's a chapter officer, and he's really involved in FFA. And so now it's come full circle, and it's really fun to have our own kid in our program. And so we're kind of back where we started, because now we don't prioritize as well. We just like, we like doing ag stuff together as a group. And his younger brother is a 6th grader, and man, he can't wait. Tell me yesterday, I can't wait till I get an ag, Mom, So you just kind of have to weather through all of that and figure out what works for you. I do think that you can burn yourself out, though, if you don't find ways to get away from the ag building. And sometimes it's just, if we're at the ag building too long, sometimes it's like, okay, let's just go to Sonic and get a Coke and clear our heads or whatever. And we try to find, like I said, Sundays are kind of our days to do just family stuff. But I really don't think we do a great job of it. I think we prioritize our ag teaching career way over that. And then the other thing that we really have started doing in the last 10 years is the week school gets out, we go on vacation with the family. We go away from Medill, wherever that may be. This year, it was not very far away from Medill. We just went to Oklahoma City, drove a little bit. We didn't even stay a whole week. But in past, we go somewhere and get away. So that's kind of what we do. I don't know. Other people might have better suggestions, but
there's some great advice in that. Certainly appreciate that, and I know for me, sometimes just that moment away, as simple as a Sonic run, can really just be the break that you need to stay focused in there. So appreciate that. Mr. Wilkinson added in the comments there about cell phones. Man, those can be an ag teacher's worst nightmare. Everybody and their dogs got your cell phone number. Believe it or not, I had a parent trying to call me about a bull being out that is nowhere close to me. You just get all kinds of crazy things because everybody has their cell phone. So Mr. Wilkinson is right. I've seen his ability to kind of walk away from the cell phone. Not Snapchat, though. Sometimes you're still on Snapchat an awful lot there, Mr. Wilkinson. I've seen you at the lake. But he has taken some downtime, so appreciate that. Speaking of cell phones and those phone calls that we get all the time, Mr. Delosier, I think maybe the one thing that ag teachers maybe take up so much of their time at times can be livestock shows or livestock projects. So share with us just a little bit about helping students purchase livestock, and again, what are some do's and don'ts with that?
Well, it's, obviously we've got the show program at Adair has always been really big, and it just seems to keep growing and growing, even the circumstances that we ran into this year. But a couple things that I've taken away from that are probably do's, and I think we're in a time frame of competition in Oklahoma in the show ring that's unprecedented quality. I think it's tougher now than in any point in time in an ag teacher's career, in my career anyway, and I hope a lot of you guys would agree with that. It's nothing anymore to spend $1,000 on a barra and then $750 to feed him, or goat, sheep, whatever. And so it really puts us in a very unique position as ag teachers. Really, do we need to be telling a kid to spend $500, $600, $700, $1,000 on a pig or a goat or a sheep, and then, they're supposed to all feed and they're supposed to all make the sale. And so I think we, in terms of the dues, we've got to be very, very proactive to our kids, and you've got to get their parents involved and tell them, you know, this is the dynamics of what this is going to cost. This is where we're at in terms of what it's going to cost in feed and what these livestock, if you want to be competitive, are going to cost. And you know, I'm as guilty of as anybody. Jump in the truck, go buy projects, write a personal check for them. I know all of us have done it. Josh, when he taught with me, he did it as a first-year teacher. I do it still yet. That's not good. I still, to this day, that's not a good deal, because here's the deal. You're waiting on those parents to pay you back when you bring those animals, and who says they're even going to take them when you bring them back? You know, those kids may not like that pig or sheep or calf or whatever that you brought home, and you might be stuck with them and everything. And then I'd hate to total up, and I don't want to be negative, Mason, but I would hate to total up over the years how much money that I have probably not collected, you know, and I know we've all ran into that. So that is definitely a don't. I think, you know, that's why ag teachers are so, that's our advantage, is the SAE visits and the ability to go to those kids' homes and be involved in them. But at the same time, we've about got to load those kids and parents up and go buy those projects, and they write the checks for them and be directly involved with it. And that is probably the thing. And it's amazing, Adair, you know, when I first started, and I know why it is, but I'm not going to tell you all, but my landscape has changed over the years at Adair, from going and buying all the projects to probably just half to 3/4 of the projects now. And I know exactly why it is, but there's no need to say that. But at the same time too, you're expected to help them all, or expected to be involved in all of them. And you've got, whether you're directly involved with those kids or not, I think it's still important that you go to their house and you show that interest, because we can be replaced real quick by somebody that supposedly is an expert in the show deal if we're not careful. And so we've got to be directly involved in that, and that part of it's becoming more and more popular, because we're in this era of everybody wants to win. Everybody wants to be in that OYE gilt sale, premium sale, Tulsa Fair premium sale, Mays County Fair premium sales. So we've got to make all these sales in order to pay for these projects, because we have so much money invested. And you know, I have 3 boys that are showing. Michelle, I might mention, my oldest son's a junior too, so that's kind of amazing. I didn't realize your son was that old. But those kids, you know, and as we have our own kids showing, I'm as guilty as anybody. Spend too much money on livestock, and you can very easily. But the dues in this case are, our caveat as being an ag teachers, we've got to be directly involved in that project. With those kids, we've got to be, you know, that's, especially in COVID-19 days, that may be the only thing we have left is SAE visits. That's our one thing that I've said this to several people. How can we keep getting checks without kids in class? And so I think we've got to think about stuff like that, and to keep our ag teaching going. And here's another thing. I asked a former student of mine that's an ag teacher the other day, and it was not Josh Davis, but I asked a former student of mine the other day, I said, that's teaching ag, I said, are you going to the ag building every day in the summer? And I won't tell you what he said, but I reminded him, as he and I were discussing, I said, your summer pay has to be protected. And so that's the advantage at Adair, is we have fall projects on feed. So I've had 3 phone calls this morning and went to 3 different kids' houses this morning for the Zoom meeting. And so anyway, I mean, I'm not, by no means am I bragging, but you better be doing your job. And the SAE part of that is something that is our advantage big time in terms of the show project deal. And so anyway, kind of got a little soapbox there, but it's just.
No, that's good. That's some great advice. I think even maybe for a few of us that have been teaching, just some good reminders, you know, in there. We have an ag truck. Let's use it. Make sure that we're using it. The summer pay, it's there. Let's make sure that we're not taking advantage of just some downtime. So. All right, Mr. Wilkinson, going to flip it back to you. I know that this is something that you and I have talked about, you know, Calumet's a very interesting perspective. Your classroom is in there. You don't have a separate ag building. You're right there with everybody else. Tell us a little bit about how do you work with other sponsors and coaches whenever you have conflicting schedules and need to share students that are active in multiple school activities?
That is a great question. And as a young teacher, you believe that your program is more important than anybody else's. And I'm not saying that's a wrong idea. I'm saying that that mentality will cause some issues. I've always been in a small school. I grew up in a small school. I've taught in a small school. And I've taught in schools that where I'm at now, we've had a state championship basketball team, a reserve champion basketball team. We've had state qualifiers. Basketball is king in Calumet, Oklahoma. And the best thing and the best advice I can give everybody, especially young teachers, is to create a relationship with those coaches. Some of them have bigger egos than they need. And I'm not saying call them. I'm saying develop a relationship to where you can have that dialogue where you can say, hey, little Johnny is competing and I need him for this team or that team. One of the first things that I do during the summertime, speaking of earning your paycheck there, Mr. Delosier, is I come up with my calendar for the year. And before school even starts, I hand every teacher, every secretary, every coach, everybody in my school gets my calendar. And when I got to Calumet, I handed it to Mr. Weldon, and he's like, holy cow, we teach 188 days and you're going to be gone 120. And my process was, I may not go to all of those, but if you see them, at least you know there's a possibility that I may have students gone. And we start planning those activities to where the baseball coach, he doesn't know his schedule for the spring of the year. But if I hand him my schedule of activities and let him know that, hey, we're going to be gone here, here, and here, that allows him to have that opportunity to reschedule or maybe not put games on that. So communication is very important. Have a calendar before school starts and make sure that you're communicating with your administrators as well, because those people will go to bat for you as well as anybody. And the most important thing is remember to be flexible. Sometimes you don't want to die on that hill. Sometimes it's better to be flexible, especially in a smaller school where you have to share every good kid. Every good kid is going to be on student council. They're going to be playing sports. They're going to be busy. And I know with my children, they're my example because my oldest played basketball, volleyball, softball, cheerleader, student council. She did it all and ran for state office. And we learn to be flexible, and sometimes they have to choose. And that is a life lesson that those kids will learn as well, that sometimes you have to prioritize what is most important to you and how many people are depending on you to be that president opening closing ceremonies team or to be sitting on the bench at a baseball game. And sometimes you need to have those frank and open conversations with those students. And if you can be flexible and just know that we're in this because of the students and because of the kids, and we want them to be successful. So that's kind of how my philosophy has always been.
That's great. Mr. Wilkinson, you had mentioned about a calendar. Is that something you do during the summer as well, or just when school's in session?
I do a summer calendar in May before we get out for the summer. And then on the summer break, when I'm in the office, I'll make it from August till July. And it has everything on there. It's very repetitive, some of it. I just literally change the date. It's a Google Doc. So it has, only thing it doesn't have on there is some of the jackpots or the jackpot speech contest. And I usually put to be announced out beside those. That way in April, they know I'm going to be taking those kids 4 to 5 nights between April 1st to April 15th.
Perfect. I think that's some really good advice, trying to pair some of the information from Mr. Delosier in terms of, what you should be doing as an ag teacher during the summer. relaying that information through a calendar can be really helpful in just building that relationship with administrators or even some parents in the community. So speaking of community, let's transition just a little bit. Miss Welchel, let's talk about your program's community service projects. I know Mr. Nichols had mentioned you're a new teacher coming into the program. How do you, build relationships with your community? I know community service projects can be a great way to do that. Share a little bit about what your program does and meeting that relationship.
All right. I absolutely love community service. You guys coming into this, all of you newbies, remember that community, if you expect them to support you, you need to support them. That's the biggest part. Without that community, you wouldn't have your program. So you need to remember that that community is the heart of your organization. And if you're following the motto right, you're living to serve. So my first year here, it was just kind of driving around and seeing what needed to be done. That first year, we redid some of the park. I mean, we went and rebuilt a gazebo, started painting, just small stuff. And I think it's also important to note that you don't have to go and spend $500 to $5,000 every time you do a community service project. It can be simple things. Also, if you're taking notes, take note that you need to apply for a Living to Serve grant available through National FFA. You can always use that, and people will definitely see that you're putting more effort into it when you're doing that. So a few of the things that we do throughout the year, we work with our town's beautification group. Because we are such a small town, we have to all act together to try to get our town back to, the good glory that it was back in the 1940s, 1950s, because it used to be like bustling. And of course, now it's a small little town with like one main street. But working with that beautification group and those members, most of those members are on the city council. So they see that you're working and you're picking up town, making it really spiffy, putting it together. They're going to know that you're involved. At the end of every November, I'll bust my ag classes out downtown, and we'll get ready for our town's biggest festival, which is the Christmas on the Trail. So it's a huge Christmas festival. Last year, I even had kids painting windows. The art teacher couldn't do it. So I was like, you know what? I have some really good kids on here that they know how to draw stuff and they're very artistic. They never get to show their abilities. Let's have them do it. So we'll do that, as well as set up all the Christmas trees, clean the sidewalks. And we also work really close with our city council to make sure that if there's any town fundraisers like the ones that we do for our cemetery, our kids are there to help set up tables. They're there to help serve on the food lines. They're helping with everything else. You just got to learn to appreciate what you guys have and roll with that. Some places have more financial means than others. I know down here where we're at in the Title I school, we're working a little bit harder to get that. Also this last year, we set up a aluminum recycling bin for our town because there wasn't one of those available. So if you see that you are lacking something in your town, try to help that, try to fill that void. So we have this recycling bin. We'll haul it all off when it gets full. Last year, we actually had the toy drive in town. The Toys for Tots program got canceled for our whole county, just because of the lack of support thereof. So we took over as a chapter for our entire county, and we held our own toy drive, and it turned out being very successful, and we were able to fill that lack. Also, it can be as simple as just making Valentine's Day cards and taking it to your senior citizen center. Some of these people, whenever they see these kids come in with their smiling faces and they're really excited to do something, that's pretty much the only glimpse of happiness they'll see all day. So just be true to your community and be ready to serve them. Anything that you can do to make a difference in your town, do it. It doesn't mean that you have to go on the side of the highway and pick up trash every single time. You can go and do your own thing. If there's a mural that needs to be painted, grab some of your kids that know how to paint, go out there, You know, if it's free to them, they're going to enjoy it. So the main thing is just take care of that community and they'll take care of you. I'm sure there's quite a few other community service ideas that some ag teachers have. I've seen some people do foods, like they do feeds for a whole bunch of people. This year, we're going to be doing a emergency responders and frontline workers feed. So we're going to do a breakfast for all the nurses and firefighters and EMS drivers in our county who help us. So just simple things that people will appreciate. And every time you're out and about, they see that you're active, they're going to appreciate you even more. So that's some of our community service.
Awesome. Those are some great ideas. You know, I know that we all have our own unique community service projects that maybe each program has done for years and years. Would encourage you to continue those. If you're a new teacher going into a program, continue with those community service projects, but also maybe find some new ways that you can give back. And that is 100% true. You know, you've got to make sure that you find ways to give back. They're supporting you. Make sure that you support your community. Mr. Davis, going to flip over to you. You know, talking about keeping students engaged, one of the ways that we can do that is to highlight some of those successes. So how do you recognize students at the end of the school year? If it's through a banquet or a ceremony or some, you know, specific awards that you give out to students, degrees, star awards, chapter officer plaques, just share a little bit with us, maybe what you're doing there at Rock Creek or what you've done in the past even.
Sure. No, I definitely am a big proponent. If you're not doing something at the end of the year to recognize kids, community members, your program, you need to be doing that and be thinking about that. Not necessarily in March, right before the end of the year, but you need to think about it probably in the fall and start kind of thinking on what you want that to look like, or maybe what it has looked like in the past. But traditionally, I've always been a part of a community banquet. Chapter FFA banquet. I know something that's been really successful for a lot of programs. It's kind of a new age type thing. It's more just an awards reception. So you don't think of the traditional serving a large meal and having the whole community maybe there, but in some different functions or different school settings where you can see just maybe the kids and family members and you know, just having refreshments and cookies and those kinds of things, and then going ahead and getting out your awards is an option too. But in terms of banquet, things that I've always traditionally done, and you can find these in the FFA manual or the handbook and all different places where you can look at how different people do their banquets and how they organize them. But traditional things I've done are chapter degrees, pass out those pins. Proficiency awards, recognize your chapter stars, star farmer, star placement, different things like that. A unique thing that I've always done is a top hand award. That's always gone to that student that is just always there, always available. They'll help in any form or fashion at any point in time. So that's always been one that's been really important to me, because it seems like there's always that one kid that is just there. They're dependable. It doesn't always mean they're an officer. But they're just somebody that needs to be recognized. Always give a top salesperson award for blue and gold meat sales or whatever your fundraisers are each year. And you can get as extensive into these things as you want. I know the manual says 2.5 hours or so. So you can fill that time pretty easily when you start looking at giving away things like scholarships, recognizing students for their academic achievements, and you know, those that may have a 4.0 in each grade. So I would encourage you to find unique ways that fit your students, fit your community, fit your school, and try to highlight that as best you can, because they've worked all year and they've tried to be involved and they deserve a chance to get recognized. Another thing that I've always tried to do is there's a unique award called the DeKalb Award, which you can go online and nominate a student through, I think it's Monsanto. And they send you like a certificate, plaque type deal, so you can recognize students there. So I think finding creative ways to recognize what those students have been involved in, and it doesn't just have to be their SAE, it doesn't just have to be maybe a CDE team. That's another thing. I've always recognized students for their CDE accomplishments in judging contest areas. But just find a way to recognize those kids, honor those kids. Something that's been going through the group chat has been talking about secretaries and custodians, cafeteria workers. I've always tried to recognize those people at the banquet too, because they're a very influential part of my everyday life and what's been helpful to keep the program going. So I always try to recognize those people. I think I said recognize the officers. So you can get pretty in depth with this deal. I mean, I'd welcome anybody else to share, but there's lots of things you can recognize students for. I think the challenge maybe sometimes when we do talk about banquets is what's the time limit? How long does it need to be? Do you serve a meal? Do you not serve a meal? And that's different for every community and every place. So you just kind of got to gauge maybe what's been done in the past and what will maybe work where you're at. I hope again that answers that.
No, that's great. That's great. Well, we are quickly running out of time. So if you've got any questions that we didn't get answered today, feel free to send those on to the real Mr. Jones, and he would be more than willing to try to get those answered. So get those emailed to Mason. We've got one final question that we're going to ask our entire group. So we're going to go through our list again. Ms. Harper, we're going to start with you. Share with us real briefly, because we're running short on time here, your favorite teaching moment, or could be your favorite thing about being a teacher. I'll leave it up to you. So favorite teaching moment or favorite thing about being an ag teacher.
Well, my favorite thing about being an ag teacher is just that I really do appreciate the fact that as an ag teacher, we have a unique opportunity to make a difference unlike anybody else. And so that's what keeps me teaching ag. I've had opportunities and thought occasionally that, I'm tired of this rigmarole and I want to do something different. And always what it comes down to is never the money or the time or the whatever. It's that I really like having a job where I know I can make a difference. So cheesy as it sounds, there you go.
I love it. I love it. It is that simple. Mr. Delosier, favorite teaching moment or favorite part about being an ag teacher?
Well, I think my most favorite ideal of teaching ag is something that old Dr. Terry told me when I first started teaching and told all of us as student teachers in the spring of '96, that if you ever lose that nervousness of when you walk into that first hour every day, you better find something else to do. And so I think that's one thing I never have lost is that nervousness. I'm a nervous guy anyway, but that nervousness has never left, and I enjoy what I do. And I'll be honest with you, I probably have had some opportunities and have had some opportunities to go do some other things like Michelle mentioned. But at the same time, too, we got the best job in the public school system. And what we get to do with kids and do activities 12 months out of the year. And so memorable or moments or anything like that, I would say our interaction with kids, we can be the most influential people out there. And that's probably what drives me and keeps me going. And on the other side of that, competition. I love competition. I love beating people. And that part there drives me a lot too. So, and I don't like to get beat. That's the other thing too. So anyway.
Absolutely. Love that. Mr. Wilkinson.
Best part about being an ag teacher is, it sounds redundant, but it's absolutely true, is having an impact on students. The biggest thing is you don't know when you're going to have that impact. You don't know when that kid at the back of the class is not, you may think he's not listening, and then you may get a phone call and he applied for a job interview, and which happened to me, and this kid was ecstatic because he nailed it. And the kid had a severe IEP, and he just went through an interview and used his FFA voice and got the job. So that was one of the coolest things, phone calls you get. Another quick thing, we mentioned it earlier, is OAETA. I encourage all of you young people to get invested. You owe it to yourself to get involved. There is so many opportunities. We could have a 2-hour session just on that. Having an impact and belonging to an organization that is so united and so tight-knit that you can call anybody anywhere and they will drop what they're doing to help you, to give you advice, to guide you, to steer you, to point you in the right direction. And it's awesome to see the STAR program with Mason and Cameron to put this to life, and Marty, you helping, because this is something that we've talked about for a while, and this is phenomenal. And even virtually, I think it's very, very beneficial to everybody. So thank you, guys.
Absolutely. Ms. Welchel. Oh, you're muted.
Absolutely. I think everybody else has kind of hit the nail on the head here, but favorite teaching moment, favorite thing about being a teacher is when you see those kids finally have that aha moment, see that light bulb come on, and they find an interest in something and just run with it. It's so awesome to see these younger kids, this younger generation get passionate. And when you see those students finally achieve an accomplishment, reach their goal that they've worked so hard for, both in and out of the classroom, it's just crazy. It's the best part about it. The outcome is what keeps me driven. So
Absolutely. Mr. Davis.
I'm torn on this question because the traditional thing about becoming an ag teacher is being involved with students. And I had an experience a couple years ago with a student that was just, it really touched me pretty good, and I really hung on to it. And it's so the impact you have in their lives. If you're not doing that and you don't put kids first, you're not doing your job. You're not in it for the right reasons, and you probably ought to find something else to do, because you do have the opportunity to make a major impact on each one of these different individuals. And to me, that's what it's all about. And when you get to experience those things, it's a feeling like you'll never, I don't think ever get to experience doing anything else. That being said, the other part of being an ag teacher is the camaraderie with other teachers, and getting to be around other teachers. And like Mr. Wilkinson said, the brotherhood, sisterhood of the organization, and knowing that there's people from all over the state that have got your back if you need them, is to me a pretty cool thing. One of the most unique things that we have that a lot of other organizations don't, a lot of their teachers don't, is this Pete Gailey thing, where, if the unfortunate circumstance something happens to you or your spouse, you're going to get a payment from the organization or state association to help with funeral expenses, and that's something you just don't find very often. That Pete Gailey deal is really, really special. We have things set up in place through our OAETA, what he's talking about, where crisis relief funds, if somebody's house gets burned down or hit by a tornado, everybody's helping, we're paying in, trying to help that person get through that time. So to me, the ability to have a fraternal organization of teachers, somebody you can count on, older people that are older teachers that have experience that I've been blessed to be able to work with, and know that I can call, and they're not going to say, oh, he's just some young pup that he don't know anything. I mean, they'll give you advice. May not be what you want all the time, but it's what you need. And so to me, that's pretty special, and that's something you just don't get in a lot of other professions and a lot of other careers. So again, that's what I'm torn on those two.
Well, I think that is a fantastic note for us to wrap up on. These thank you all for serving on our panel today, and really appreciate your wisdom that you shared. I really hope these conversations don't end as our Zoom call wraps up. These are things that should continue on, and we, this was really designed with Mason and Cameron and the STAR committee to really be a relationship builder, that now you put some names and some faces together, and we hope that we continue those relationships, so that if you do have a question, maybe you're in the middle of the year and just not really sure which direction to go, that you can really lean on some of these ag teachers here for some words of wisdom, maybe some encouragement, some advice along the way. So I would encourage you to reach out. You've got the names and the faces together now. I would encourage you that if you've got a question, do not hesitate to reach out. I know maybe just a couple of last minute things there. Mason, he's got a survey that he posted in the chat. Let's make sure, or an evaluation, I should say, to make sure that we fill that out to get some really good feedback. Some of the questions that were asked today are actually off some of the past evaluations of some earlier sessions. So I would encourage you, know that feedback is really being evaluated or looked through. I would encourage you to fill that out. And then, of course, if you've got any additional questions that didn't get answered today, please feel free to send those to Mason, and he will either get the answer or find out the answer for you from one of our panelists. So really thank you to all of our panelists and everybody that joined us today. Hopefully all of us can take a few things away from this session. So Mason, anything else? All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.